you are just as excited as I am to get this party going. So please, without further ado, join me in welcoming the incomparable Alicia Witt and the lovely Ernest. We've got a special guest joining her. Hi, baby. Oh my goodness, Ernest. He's like, what kind of dog is he? He's adorable. What's the breed?
Is a rescue, and it turns out he's more Cocker Spaniel than anything.
Really?
But
hi, cutie. Oh,
he's
adorable.
a super mutt.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and for bringing him, because he's just too cute to keep back there. Yeah, we're gonna get right to it. I'd like to start with Urban Legend.
Yeah.
That film, yes. That film has become a cult classic at this point, and I feel like that kind of was part of a very specific era in horror. How has that film shaped your perspective on horror in general, and then on the rest of your career?
That was the first foray into horror for me, and I felt like I had mixed feelings about it before I went into it. I'm not someone who goes to see horror myself generally, but I love psychological thrillers like The Mothman Prophecies or The Others or Silence of the Lambs, that kind of thing. But I had a conversation with Wes Craven, actually, because I had auditioned for Scream, and he had told me that he believed horror movies were really important, and rather than amplifying the darkness in a person who goes to see it, instead it brings up our own survival instincts, and you look at the final girl as the one who's like taking you through this journey. So at the end of the movie, if they've done it right, you should feel like you've just survived something incredible, and you walk out feeling like you can take on the world. And I loved that perspective. So I obviously didn't end up being a part of Scream, but when Urban Legend came around a few years later, I was excited to do it because I remembered what Wes had told me. And the thing is, though, in Urban Legend, I was soaking wet, and even when I wasn't filming outside in the rain, I had just come in from the rain. So even these scenes where everybody else in the cast was inside partying and having fun, and Natalie comes running in to warn them about the killer, they would hose me down before the scene. So I was constantly wet and cold. It was early spring in Toronto. So I have this, when I think Urban Legend, I think cold and wet. And I saw Rebecca recently at a convention, and it was really nice to see her not being cold and wet.
So there's been talk for quite a while of an Urban Legend reboot. Is that something that you'd be a part of if you were asked?
I will be a part of it if I'm asked. I have not been asked yet.
Not yet.
But thank you.
Yet.
I actually want that very badly. And I think I have a really strong sense of who Natalie would be, having endured that horror and having not been believed. And then all of these people ended up dead because people didn't believe her. But then, of course, also, spoiler alert, I think most of you have seen Urban Legend, she is indirectly responsible for all of these deaths because it was revenge for something stupid she did when she was young. So I have a sense of who she would be, and I think she's tough as nails now. And really, I see her as being almost like a bodybuilder type. I would want to train for it, and just, I feel like she's thrown herself into physical strength, and she's a lot harder now than she was in that movie. I really want to see who she's become.
I agree. I would love to see where she is now.
Yeah.
I think it's a shame we haven't gotten more of that character. I think we need more, for sure.
Something tells me it's going to happen. And I don't have any intel, but there's just enough rumbling and enough people who ask me about it, and I just have a feeling it's going to line up. I do.
I like that. So you have done horror, you've done a myriad of very happy Christmas films.
Yes.
Speaking of which, we just had Doug Jones here. He asked me to tell you that he adores you, and his favorite Christmas movie is A Very Merry Mix-Up. So he wanted me to tell you that.
That's my favorite one too.
Is it?
Yeah, my favorite of mine.
Of yours?
Yes.
Yeah.
I also like other Christmas movies.
Yeah.
Yes,
Who doesn't?
A Very Merry Mix-Up is my favorite. It was the first one I did that ended up on Hallmark.
Yeah.
And I had no idea it was going to, for a few years, become a sort of yearly tradition.
Yeah.
But there was magic on that set. We all felt it. It was a very special film.
That's amazing.
And it meant so much that it became a movie that resonated with people.
That's incredible. Now, being in films like that versus being in horror films, how do you prepare for the darker roles versus, more lighter films?
I would say, and thank you, that's a very good question and very important. Urban Legend's a good example, even though it's not as quite as dark as, say, Longlegs. But my character's going through a lot, and she's in distress, to put it mildly, through the entire movie. And I did take that home with me, and it was hard on my psyche, to be perfectly honest. But I was 22, so I didn't know yet how to let it go at the end of the day. And I also didn't know how important that was. But as years went on, I did start to realize not only was I happier if I didn't take it quite so seriously, and if I could just let go of it when I was done the scene or done the day of work, I felt not only did I feel lighter myself, but I think I started realizing I was doing better work. And by the time I filmed Longlegs last year, I've had a number of dark roles, and this was so intense that I really mindfully put an energy field around myself every day in the trailer. And just before I went out to the set to film, I just kind of sealed my own self up. And then when I was on the set, I opened myself up fully to let this other entity come in through me, which is what it felt like. I've not quite had an experience like that before.
That's incredible. Longlegs, I feel like, is an extremely unique film. And the role that you played was mind-blowing. And I know you guys agree with that. Such an incredible film, incredible role. What drew you to that particular project?
I have rarely read a script where from the moment I started reading her lines and reading Ruth, I just felt like a visceral longing to play her. And it wasn't mine yet. I was given the script pending a Zoom meeting that I was going to have with Oz. And incredibly, he didn't ask me to audition. He had seen my work in the most recent Twin Peaks, which was very dark, but also very brief. But that element that he saw in it, which was actually a very out-of-body experience, he recognized in that one brief scene that I would be able to access what he was looking for in Ruth. So all we had was this hour-long Zoom meeting, and I also had a dream the night before I read the script that ended up being the way that we filmed one of the scenes in it. So I went into the script surprised that I had dreamed it, and then I just loved it more the more I read it, and then the Zoom meeting couldn't have gone better, and I started praying that I might get this role, and I did. And
You manifested it.
I wanted it so badly, and I felt like I needed to play her, and the experience was almost like a healing of an ancient ancestral something in my lineage that needed to be released. Very profound for me.
That's amazing. Speaking of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Woo! Yes. Many, many woos for Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks is unique in the, just, David Lynch in general, the mind-bending, surreal, almost abstract storytelling narrative. How is the preparation for something like that different than, say, A Very Merry Christmas? A Very Merry Mix-Up, sorry. How, obviously they're vastly different roles in different projects, but something that's a little more grounded in reality versus the surreal abstract. What's the preparation like for those types of projects?
The thing about the Twin Peaks, the more recent one, as you may know, nobody had the script except for Kyle MacLachlan. So I showed up with 5 or 6 pages total, if that. And that's all. All that I knew was I was playing the same character because she was Gersten in the pages. But nothing else, no information. I had no idea what was happening in the scenes or who Stephen was or who we were to each other. And I was brought to the set in Washington State after I arrived from the airport to say hello to David, and he must have seen the question in my eyes right after we hugged hello, and he said, "You're probably gonna ask me what's going on in these scenes, and I'm not going to tell you." And I said, "Okay, David, all right, well." So the answer is all I had to do was learn my very few lines and then just trust David, which that was the 4th time we'd worked together. So I trust him more than anyone. And I knew that he was going to guide me to channel whatever he needed. And he knew what was going on in those scenes, even though I didn't. Caleb, who played Stephen, also did not know what was going on. He had a much bigger role than I did, and he was equally mystified. And so we just trusted each other, we trusted David, and we let go and created some crazy thing together.
Sounds like an incredible experience.
Yeah, it was.
Let's talk about Exorcist for a little bit.
Yeah.
That role and the project in general, it lends psychological intensity with more, I would say, traditional horror elements. What's the most challenging part of doing, blending those types of ideals?
That one was fun because I got to start out as a normal, quote-unquote, person. If anything, she was more ethereal and more heavenly and more seductive and kind of like the dream girl, because she appears as an idealized version of John Cho's character's wife, who has ended her life tragically due to mental illness. And there she is, she appears, and she's every bit as beautiful and as loving and everything, and even more than he remembers. But that's the devil's way of getting in, because it didn't work. They sent a kid to possess him, and he wasn't fooled. And then they bring in the big guns and send his wife in, which is really the devil, but she looks like an angel. And then, gosh, we had this one episode where we got to see Nikki in actual flashbacks. So we got to see who she really was, which is kind of, she's a real person, but she's lovely, but she's troubled. And then we start seeing his versions of what the memories were, where it's not quite the way it happened. We actually filmed 3 different versions of the moment when she decides to walk into the water and in her life. It was incredibly good work, and I would say if anyone hasn't seen it, which a lot of people haven't, I would recommend it. It was a quite high budget show, and we did some really sophisticated special effects, and the makeup, the prosthetics on me in particular, because as the season went on, Nikki starts looking more and more horrible, and you realize how
how far gone John Cho's character is, because he still thinks she's lovely, and she's looking, by the end of it, she's grotesque, covered in veins, and just every bit from head to toe, every bit of my flesh was covered with prosthetics layered with goo and black, and it took 4 hours in makeup for the longest special effects look. And the final episode, I literally emerged from a pool of black goo. So I'm covered in head to toe with this stuff, which also took an hour to get off at the end of the night. And they lowered me down into the pool, and I had to crouch down and hold my breath, wait till the bubbles stilled, and then on the count, emerge. And I was on wires as well, because then I float. Just amazing stuff. And then there was a kiss. I had to kiss the actor who played the priest, covered in black goo. Oh, it was just the kind of stuff you just have to giggle at. Like, this is my job? This is cool.
That is a cool job.
Yeah.
We're gonna toss it to you guys in just a moment. So if you have a question for Alicia, please line up here in the center. There's a mic right there, and we'll take your questions in just a moment. So Alicia, I'd like to ask you, you have worked with so many amazing directors. Is there a specific director that you haven't worked with yet that you would like to work with?
Yeah, there are so many. Pedro Almodovar is one. I want to work with Cameron Crowe again. I worked with him in Vanilla Sky, but too briefly. I'd love to make a full movie with him. Gosh, there are so many. Their names are escaping me. I'm less good with names, but there's a lot. Oh, the Duplass brothers, either one of them or both of them. I love them both as actors and as directors, both of them. I think they're brilliant. I want to be on Yellow Jackets really badly.
Okay, so
And also Only Murders in the Building is another film.
yes, we're gonna have to write to the folks behind Yellow Jackets and Only Murders in the Building to make that happen, y'all.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm on board.
I would
Campaign starts
down with
officially
that.
today.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna throw it to you guys. Start with your first question, please.
I know that music has certainly been a lifelong thing with you.
Yeah.
I saw a video of you quoting Shakespeare on That's Incredible when you were 5 years old. And being a teacher these days, I see so many people who just kind of are trying to figure out what they're gonna do. When did you know that this is it, performing? I'm gonna pour everything into this.
I love that you referenced that moment, because it's interesting. It wasn't cognizant in my brain because I grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, and my parents were teachers. My dad taught for 35 years. So thank you for doing that. That's the most important job. But there is a moment that you can actually see in that clip, and I think it's the moment I realized what it feels like to perform. Because I didn't have any aspiration to be an actor, because I didn't know anybody who did that, and I didn't really think it was a reasonable career option. But there's a moment where the audience reacts to a line that I say, and I turn and look at the audience, like, what? And my whole face lights up with amazement, but also like that high that you get from being in front of a crowd and getting to communicate with people. I believe that's the moment that somewhere in me the seed was planted. And then also the moment that I walked onto the set of Dune after I'd been cast, which all came from That's Incredible, by the way. I wasn't an actor, didn't have an agent, but it was through that the casting director for Dune asked me to audition 2 years later. But the moment I walked onto the set for Dune, I had this eerie feeling that I'd found what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And at the same time, when I would practice piano by myself in my living room, also at the age of 7, I would kind of look out into the dark and imagine there was a crowd there and imagine myself playing my own songs in front of an audience, much like what I do now.
That's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. All right, next.
Yes.
You look awesome.
Thank you. I was wondering, can you talk about what it's like to do a 1-episode appearance in a show like The Sopranos as compared to doing a 1-episode appearance in The Walking Dead?
Yeah. Wow. Well, The Sopranos, I was in the beginning of season 2 of The Sopranos, and I hadn't seen the show when I first auditioned. I knew it was a big deal, but hadn't yet seen it. And I was blown away by how precise and how exactly like making a feature film it felt. I had not had a lot of drama TV experience at that point, and I felt like I was making a movie, and I didn't want it to ever end. I loved that cast. I loved working with Michael Imperioli. Would have loved to have kept on developing that. And then The Walking Dead was similar in that I didn't want it to end, and I did make lifelong friendships and felt so deeply bonded to some of the people that I worked with, and also that character and all of it. But what was different about The Walking Dead is that I was a huge fan of the show when I was asked to audition. So when I was given the role, I didn't realize how meaty it was. I only had one scene to audition with. And then to discover I was going to be working with Melissa, who was my favorite actor on the show. And also to have the first scene that we filmed, it was the scene on the walkie-talkie. Andy showed up to be the voice on the other side, which I couldn't believe he drove all the way in on his day off just to be on the walkie. And then I had to kill a walker also before lunch. And it was all just surreal. I felt like I'd been shrunk into the television set, and I was nervous. I felt pressure. And then at lunchtime, joking and laughing with everybody, all the nervousness went away. But I thought it was a big, big honor to be asked to be on that show. I still do.
One quick follow-up. Was that you in the Walker makeup in the end?
No, sadly, no. And the only reason is because we also were filming the scene where my face got eaten off. And they were right next to each other in the filming schedule, and it was the last day of my work. So it took 2.5 hours to do both of those makeups. So there was no way it could be me for both. I really wanted it to be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great costume.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Alicia. Nancy as well.
Hi, Nico.
I hate to admit this, but I've only seen 2 things you've been in, Urban Legend and Longlegs, of course. So the question I want to ask is, what advice would 2024 Alicia give 1998 Alicia Witt? Whether it be acting, just as a woman, as a person, anything.
I would say just hold on to your conviction of who you are and why you're doing this, and don't worry about the times when people are going to make you feel like you don't belong, or you're too weird, or you need to be X, Y, and Z, because that's a reality of being a young woman in the entertainment business. And there were a number of years around Urban Legend and the years following that, like about 5 or 6 years following that, when I definitely felt the pressure of just stupid stuff, like, oh, I need to lose 5 pounds, or I didn't get that role because because I didn't dress sexy enough or all that bull crap, you know, it's just stupid. And I would just say, I would try to instill me with a little bit more of the confidence that I had when I was a teenager, like when I was really starting out with my roles and all of that, and just to have all of that faith, and also not to take it so seriously, just have a little more fun with it.
Absolutely.
Now I do. Now I enjoy it a lot more now than I did then.
Yes, ma'am. You were phenomenal, Longlegs. Thank you for answering that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I have another question for you. You mentioned that the advice you would give younger Alicia
Yeah.
would be to not forget why you do this. Can you tell us why you do this?
I do this because I have a feeling that I'm supposed to be doing this. And by this, I mean all of this. I play characters because I feel like I can entertain, I can distract, I can, when I'm playing a role that's complicated, I love the idea that you might think in the beginning of watching this character that you have nothing in common with her, but maybe by the end of it you have some understanding and even some empathy. I guess that's one of the reasons I loved Ruth in Longlegs so much, because I understood why she did what she did, and I understood why she was so tortured. She's a survivor. And any parent can identify with loving your child enough to do anything to keep them alive. So I also feel like there's something about connecting, like even all of us here in this room, you might have very little in common with each other, and the idea that all of you have maybe seen something I've been in, and there's such diverse things you've seen, but just I don't know, it's about connection for me. There's something about putting my spirit into these other characters and then creating something that's going to hopefully make the world a little better. And certainly music, when I play a gig and people are there from all over and they all know the songs or they're discovering the songs for the first time that night, I feel this strong sense of having connected everybody, at least for that moment. The same way I feel when I go see an artist who I love, and I might be standing next to somebody that I disagree with on a lot of topics, but we all love the artist, so we're connected through music. That's why I do it. And at this point, I have no idea what I would do for a living if I weren't blessed enough to be an entertainer for a living. I feel like I would have no clue how to do a 9-to-5 job. I don't think I'd be very good at most other things. I love this shape-shifting kind of a world.
Yeah, it sounds like a great gig.
I'm very
9 to 5
lucky.
is not. We don't like that.
Well, I
Don't
just am in
recommend.
awe of people who have those jobs, the teachers, the doctors, the
Yes.
attorneys, the psychologists, everybody. Yeah, you just, I'm blown away by what
Yeah.
other people do for a living.
As someone who's been part of
Military, I've
Yes.
met a lot of
Yes.
military
Absolutely.
here today. There's nothing more important. It's just,
No,
yeah.
I agree. As someone who's been part of big franchises, The Walking Dead, Twin Peaks, even though that's not really a franchise, but big projects that have massive followings.
Yeah.
Is there a particular franchise that you really would like to be a part of?
I mean, I know it sounds a little corny, but I truly would like to be a part of the Marvel world.
Yeah.
I'm into that.
Yeah, nice.
People rag on it a little, but I think it sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
And just the world of the superhero, that's a fun archetype, and much like all the professions I just mentioned, those are all superheroes, real life superheroes. And to call it a superhero or say you have these powers, really it's just it's just another way of putting words to how in awe we all are of what other people do. All of us are here for a very specific purpose, and we all have our superpowers, and those of us around us in our own lives think of us as superheroes for what we do. So I think it would be really fun to play a character that has the ability to time travel or the ability to see into a person's brain, and I don't know, whatever they do.
Yeah, that
Superhuman
sounds-
strength. Also, I love physical stunts. I love when there's stunts to be done in a role, because that just challenges me, and I get to do training and coordinating, working out specific, like sword play. I got to do some of on Supernatural. Woo! And I want to do something like that, to play an action hero.
That would be amazing. I would love to see you in that.
Yeah.
The boys.
The boys.
Good suggestion.
Thank you.
Do you have a favorite project of yours that you like as a fan?
I always mention this movie called Playing Mona Lisa. It's a little film that I made actually right after Urban Legend. So Urban Legend, as I've established, was kind of a darker experience, of course, and it was fun, but it was also it was a heavy character who was going through a lot. And then Playing Mona Lisa, I made a few months later, and the character I played in that is Claire. She was written as a ballerina, but she became a classical piano player when I was cast at my request, because they both are similar disciplines and similar worlds that take you away from being a normal, quote unquote, teenager or young adult. So this character and me, myself, at age 23, were like mirror images of each other. So it's like a time capsule. And that movie has a very special place in my heart. And I'm still very much in touch with a whole lot of the people involved with it. Just a little magical, fun, sweet movie.
That's awesome. Can you tell us anything about what you have coming up that we don't know about yet?
I'm not allowed to announce them yet, but I'll tell you, because it's going to be announced very soon. One of them has to do with werewolves. And that's what I'm filming right now in Vancouver. And it's so good. And the other one is another, I suppose we would call it a psychological horror. And one of the actors in it is somebody I've been wanting to work with for a very long time. And that's filming in just a few weeks. And I love my character in this one. So those two, and then there's also an historical drama that I'm scheduled to film in January. So all three of those are not announced yet, but good stuff.
Looking forward to
most
it.
importantly, for the moment, my Christmas album.
Yes, Christmas album. Tell us about that.
Well, I produced it myself. It's the first time I've self-produced an entire project. A lot of my solo Christmas, or my single Christmas songs were produced by myself. But this one is 12 songs, 9 originals, and 3 traditionals. And the first single just came out yesterday. It's called I'm Not Ready for... Oh, that's not true. That's my previous one. It's called I Think I'm Spending Christmas With You, and that's the name of the album. And the whole thing will be out on Friday. And I've got a 12-city tour that is booked as well, which starts November 30th in Boston and works all the way around the East and the Midwest and the South. So yeah.
Can we get tickets on your website?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
AliciaWittMusic.com will take you to all the show dates and link to download the album and all the things. AliciaWittMusic.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think we have one more question.
Do we? Oh, hi. Yes. One more
Hey,
question. This will be our last one.
One of my favorite roles of yours was when you played Wendy Crow on Justified. I love Justified. I love the ending when you finally. Is that your brother, right? The guy that played your. Was it the brother? Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Rappaport.
When you finally get rid of him at the end because he was such an annoying guy, right? And just the way he's gurgling out. Yeah. But my question is, you know, on a show like that, you know, the end arc is at the end you're going to eventually kill him.
Yeah.
Do you know that at the beginning of the season that you're going to eventually kill him, or do you wait until later before they tell you that that's going to be the end part?
It depends on the show and probably depends on the season. But everything is different. Like on The Exorcist, I pretty much knew what the arc was going to be. They had already decided what it would be. So I did know what the progression would be of that. But on Justified, I didn't, and the writers didn't know either. I think they knew that Daryl was going to end up dead. I think they knew that had to happen. But they had not yet decided how he was going to meet his demise or who was going to be at the other end of the killing of him. So when we got the script for the final episode and I found out that it was going to be me, I was so excited, so happy. It felt like the appropriate end to their arc, especially since we had already seen that horrific episode where he beats her up, his own sister, and he's dragging me by the hair, and that was so brutal to film, and so I felt so demoralized as Wendy, and so humiliated, and it was the writers watching how we all went deeper and deeper into our characters, that they were formulating how it was going to wind up, and I loved the writing. Every episode they gave us more and more. That was such a good experience. That was another out-of-body experience, filming that final scene with Michael. We both talked about it later. We did not feel like we were ourselves. We became Daryl and Wendy, and it was like we saw our childhoods together flash before our eyes. So eerie, like this imagined history that we had as brother and sister right before he killed him. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for your question. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us this weekend. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you today.
Thank you.
Please put your hands together for Alicia Witt. Thank you so much. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your spooky weekend. Get out there, have some fun, and we will see you soon.